Ladies and gentlemen, there are women who walk among us, quietly, gracefully, who seem untouched by the superficial rhythms of modern life. They speak not often, but when they do, truth resonates. They laugh, but their joy is seasoned with a deep understanding of sorrow. These women are not just wise, they are ancient in spirit. They carry within them the residue of lifetimes, the sediment of stories untold, and the inner fire of an old soul. An old-souled woman finds nourishment in solitude. While the world races ahead in frantic pursuit of noise, validation and distraction, she turns inward. She does not retreat from life, but rather moves towards something deeper than surface engagements. Solitude to her is not a condition of being alone. It is a sacred environment without interruption. In these quiet spaces her thoughts expand, her emotions clarify, and her spirit reconnects with truths too subtle to be seen in the glare of daily life. She doesn't seek solitude because she dislikes people. In fact, her empathy runs so deep that the energy of others can sometimes overwhelm her. The stillness becomes a form of healing, a reset, a homecoming. She does not fear the silence because within it she hears what others miss. The voice of her own soul whispering through the static. While many see silence as emptiness, she experiences it as fullness, where she can feel her own essence undisturbed by performance or expectation. In this sacred quiet she uncovers memories not always her own, emotions shaped by something larger than her current story, wisdom that arrives without source or warning. Others may misread her comfort in solitude as aloofness or melancholy, not realizing it takes great strength to sit quietly with oneself and not flee. She doesn't need the constant hum of conversation or the validation of being seen to feel alive. Her vitality is internal, steady, and self-renewing. The world often celebrates extroversion, action, and visibility, but she knows that power is also found in the unseen, the quiet, the depths. There are oceans within her, and it is in solitude that she learns how to swim in them, how to listen to their tides. She may walk alone in the woods, sit for hours with a book, gaze at the sky without needing distraction. And in those moments she is more present than many who move in crowds. Her solitude is not escape. It is engagement with a dimension that cannot be accessed through noise or haste. It is in this space that her truest thoughts rise, uncoded and whole, and it is there that she meets the core of who she really is, time and again, not as a stranger, but as an old friend returning from a long journey without needing to explain where she has been or why. While others search outwardly for meaning, for approval, for a sense of place in the world, a woman with an old soul moves inward with quiet certainty. Her inner world is not just a refuge. It is a fortress built from lived experience, ancient knowing, and the quiet accumulation of truths gathered over time. She does not define herself through titles, roles, or the shifting opinions of others because her identity is not tethered to the surface of things. It is rooted far beneath, in a place where the self is not something to be constructed but something to be remembered. This inner stability allows her to walk through chaos without losing herself, to endure criticism without crumbling, to love deeply without becoming lost in another. It is not that she is invulnerable, rather, her strength lies in her ability to return to center, to find calm within her own being when the world becomes too loud or too fast. People may misunderstand this as detachment or emotional distance, but it is neither. It is presence, deep, grounded presence that comes from being anchored in something that doesn't change with trends, doesn't shake with conflict, doesn't disappear when she is alone. Her thoughts are layered, her emotions nuanced, and her insights carry the weight of someone who has spent lifetimes observing the soul's many faces. She doesn't speak to impress, she speaks to express what feels deeply true, and only when words are necessary. Often she chooses silence not because she has nothing to say, but because so much within her does not need to be said to be understood. She trusts her intuition not because it's easy, but because it has proven itself over and over again in ways logic could never predict. Her sense of self is not rigid or prideful. It is humble, spacious, and open to evolving, but never at the cost of her truth. When others panic in uncertainty, she listens to the quiet stirrings within and waits for direction to emerge from the stillness. This kind of inner world is not built overnight, it is cultivated through reflection, heartbreak, surrender, and the willingness to look inward even when the answers aren't clear. It is from this depth that she lives, chooses, creates, and it is here that she finds the kind of clarity no external system can provide or replace because she does not merely believe in herself. She knows herself as one might know the shape of their own breath, or the rhythm their heartbeat without needing to be reminded, or reassured. She feels everything with a depth that cannot be explained, as if her heart was designed not only for her own experiences but for the collective of the world itself. It is not simply empathy. It is something older, deeper. a kind of emotional inheritance that makes her attuned to suffering even when it is unspoken, unseen, or hidden beneath a smile. She walks into a room and senses the tension before a word is spoken, feels the grief behind polite conversation, and hears the silent cries that others have long since learned to suppress. Her sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a sacred gift, though it often comes at a cost. She carries burdens that aren't hers to carry, because her soul does not distinguish between mine and theirs, when it comes to pain. To her, all pain is real. All heartbreak is valid, all sorrow is shared. There are moments when a single news headline can unravel her for hours, when the suffering of strangers across the world reaches her as though it were happening next door. Animals, children, the elderly, those who cannot speak for themselves, move her deeply, as if some part of her recognizes their silence as its own language. People often tell her she is too sensitive, that she should harden, detach, protect herself, but she knows she was not built for numbness. She understands that to feel is to be alive, and to feel deeply is to be fully human, even if it means walking through life more exposed, more affected. Her emotional wounds are not just from this life. Sometimes they echo with the pain of other times, other places, other stories that seem embedded in her bones. And still, she chooses to remain open. She doesn't shut down even when it would be easier to disconnect. Instead, she lets the sorrow move through her like a river, knowing it has somewhere to go, somewhere it needs to be witnessed. In this way she becomes a kind of vessel, not absorbing everything, but allowing pain to pass through her in a way that transforms it. Her tears are not signs of fragility but of purification, of alchemy. Of an ancient soul doing what it has always done: feel the weight of the world, hold it briefly, and somehow still continue to love, to hope, to give without asking anything in return or needing anyone to fully understand the depth of what she carries or why it never quite leaves her. She does not communicate in the usual ways, where words are exchanged like currency and meaning is confined to the surface. Instead, her expression lives in the layers beneath speech, in the tone of a voice, in the pause between sentences, in the way her eyes linger a moment too long as if trying to translate the unspoken. She has an instinct for the symbolic, for the dreamlike, for the language of the soul that doesn't require explanation because it is felt before it is understood. When she speaks, her words often carry more than literal meaning. They come wrapped in metaphor, in archetype, in the imagery of things unseen but deeply known. She sees the world through symbols, noticing signs where others see coincidence, feeling meaning in patterns others dismiss as random. A crow's flight, the sudden change in wind, a fragment of a song heard in passing. These are not meaningless details to her, they are messages, mirrors, echoes of something deeper trying to reach the surface. She listens not just with her ears but with her whole being, tuning into the spaces between words where truth often hides. People often find themselves saying things to her they have never said to anyone, not because she demands it, but because her presence invites honesty. Her silence makes space for revelation. She understands that most people are not truly heard in this world, and she offers that hearing not as performance but as a natural part of who she is. Even when she disagrees, she listens with such attention that others feel seen, which is rarer than being understood. Her insight comes not just from intellect but from intuition, from an ability to sense what lies behind the mask, beneath the carefully crafted persona. She does not need to be told what is wrong, she often already knows, even if she says nothing. Her questions are never superficial, they pierce gently but directly into the heart of what matters, inviting others to go deeper, to reflect, to meet themselves more honestly. In a world obsessed with noise, her way of communicating feels ancient, like a forgotten art of soul-to-soul dialogue that doesn't rely on speed, volume, or cleverness but on presence, on resonance, on the quiet recognition that truth lives in what is not said just as much as in what is spoken, and that sometimes, the most profound connections are forged in silence so full it says everything without needing a single word. She finds herself drawn to what others call outdated, irrelevant, or old-fashioned, yet to her, these things pulse with a kind of life that the modern world often forgets. She does not chase trends, nor does she care to be seen as current, for her soul resonates with that which has endured, not with what is momentarily popular. Old books speak to her in ways new ones rarely do, their yellowed pages and worn covers carrying the fingerprints of time and truth. Music from decades or even centuries ago stirs something within her that feels like memory, as though she is not merely listening but remembering a song she once loved in another time, another place. She wanders antique stores not to collect things, but to feel the stories left behind in objects that once belonged to hands now turned to dust. When she travels, she seeks out the ruins, the forgotten streets, the sacred stones hidden behind modern facades, because these places still hold a frequency she can feel in her bones. She is often uninterested in the latest shows, the newest apps or the fast-moving waves of digital life, not out of resistance or arrogance but because she finds little nourishment there. She knows that truth ages well, that beauty deepens with wear, that meaning grows stronger with time, and so she surrounds herself with what reflects that understanding. Her home, her style, her rituals may all feel timeless, not because she tries to be different but because her spirit has always lived just slightly outside the clock. She honors the seasons, the moon phases, the old myths that still whisper through the cracks of modern life. She reads poetry more than news, keeps journals instead of tweets, sends handwritten letters when most have forgotten how to hold a pen with reverence. Others may view her as nostalgic or even eccentric. But what they don't see is that she is not looking backward. She is remembering forward, reconnecting with the threads that link past and future in the eternal present. Her soul doesn't recognize time the way others do, it moves in circles and rhythms and echoes. This is why she often feels more at home among the old, the forgotten, the enduring, because these things speak her language nearer her essence, and remind her of the quiet, enduring truths that never needed to be modern to be or to matter in the deepest places, where the soul still listens. There is a certain sadness that lives quietly beneath her smile. A weight carried not with despair but with a profound sense of knowing. It is the sadness of someone who has loved deeply and lost, who has witnessed the impermanence of all things, and yet chooses to remain open to life's fragile beauty. This sadness is not visible in grand displays but in subtle moments. A pause before laughter, a softness around the eyes, a hesitation in speech when memories rise like distant waves. It is the kind of melancholy that feels like an old song playing softly in the background of her days, a companion that reminds her of what truly matters beyond the noise and distractions. This sorrow is not a burden she carries unwillingly, rather, it is part of her landscape, woven into the fabric of her being like the quiet shadows that give depth to light. She understands the fleeting nature of joy and the inevitability of pain, and so she embraces them both with grace. Her sadness often appears as empathy, as the tears she sheds quietly for the suffering of others, for the world's unspoken griefs, for the brokenness that so many try to hide. It is a sadness that has no need to be fixed, no desire to be erased, because it is a doorway to wisdom and compassion. In her quiet moments she may reflect on losses of people, of innocence, of time itself, not with bitterness but with acceptance, recognizing that these experiences have shaped her soul and deepened her capacity to love. Her sadness is noble. It carries a dignity born from knowing that life's beauty is inseparable from its fragility. This melancholy also connects her to something greater than herself, a shared human experience that transcends individual pain. It is as if she holds the collective sorrows of many lifetimes within her, and in doing so, she becomes a living testament to endurance, resilience, and hope. Even in the darkest hours, she chooses to trust that sorrow will pass, that the light will return, and that through it all, the heart can remain open and tender, ready to receive whatever comes next without fear or resistance. She approaches the idea of death not with fear or avoidance but with a quiet respect and deep understanding that it is a natural and inevitable part of life's great cycle. To her, death is not a final ending but a transformation, a passage from one state of being to another, much like the changing of seasons or the ebb and flow of the tides. This acceptance gives her a calmness that others may mistake for detachment. But it is something far richer, a presence rooted in the awareness of life's impermanence and the preciousness that arises from it. She observes the world through this lens, seeing the beauty in decay as much as in growth, knowing that every ending holds the seed of a new beginning. This perspective allows her to move through loss with grace, to honor what has passed without clinging or denial, and to welcome change as a teacher rather than an enemy. She is attuned to the cycles of nature, the falling leaves, the dying embers, the setting sun, and in these she finds reminders of her own place in the grand design. This rhythm is not just metaphor but lived reality, a steady pulse that guides her choices, her relationships, her understanding of time itself. Her respect for death often manifests in how she lives, choosing authenticity over pretense, depth over distraction, and presence over avoidance. Because she knows that life is fleeting and every moment is a gift. She listens to the quiet whispers of endings in all things, from the closing of a chapter to the fading of a friendship, and honors these moments as sacred transitions rather than losses to be feared or resisted. This acceptance also gives her a kind of courage, a fearlessness that is not brash but quiet and enduring. She does not waste energy worrying about what is inevitable but instead channels her awareness into living fully, deeply, and with intention. The knowledge of death as transformation allows her to shade illusions of control and permanence, opening her to a more fluid, flexible way of being. It fosters humility and a profound sense of connection to the cycles that govern all life, reminding her that she is part of a larger whole, one that includes beginnings and endings, light and shadow, growth and decay. Woven together in the endless dance of existence, she carries within her a natural ability to heal, not because she seeks recognition or wears a title that legitimizes her role, but because healing flows from her presence as effortlessly as breath. People are drawn to her not always knowing why, sensing a calmness that settles over their unrest, a warmth that soothes unseen wounds. Her words, even when few, seem to carry a quiet power, offering comfort and hope where confusion and despair once lived. She listens deeply, not just to the surface of what is said but to the emotions and energies beneath, allowing others to feel truly heard, and seen in a way that many have never experienced before. Her touch, whether physical or emotional, has a restorative quality, like the gentle unfolding of a flower or the slow healing of a scar. She does not need to fix or solve. Simply being present, bearing witness to another's pain, is enough to start the process of transformation. This healing presence is not limited to moments of crisis, but extends into everyday life, in the way she holds space for others to be themselves without judgment, in the patience she offers when someone is struggling, and in the quiet encouragement that inspires courage and growth. Others often underestimate the power of such gentle care, because the world tends to celebrate loud gestures and dramatic acts, but her strength lies precisely in the subtlety of her influence. She understands that healing is not linear or neat, it is messy, slow, and often invisible to the outside eye, but no less real or vital. This wisdom often comes from her own experiences of pain and recovery, from the inner journeys she has walked alone, and the insights gained from confronting her own shadows. She does not heal by taking on others' burdens, but by helping them reconnect with their own strength and resilience, acting as a mirror that reflects back their own capacity to mend and grow. Her presence becomes a sanctuary, a refuge where brokenness can be held gently, where hope is quietly restored, and where the soul can breathe again after suffocating in darkness. This unspoken gift of healing is one of the quiet miracles she carries in her being, touching lives not through grand gestures but through the profound impact of simply being there, and authentically. She cannot bring herself to engage in what feels false, shallow, or performative because something in her simply refuses to pretend. There is a deep-rooted need for authenticity that governs how she moves through the world, a quiet inner compass that turns her away from empty compensations, artificial relationships, and environments that demand she shrink or disguise herself. It's not that she judges others for living differently, it's just that she cannot tolerate dishonesty in herself. Superficiality feels like noise to her, like static that blocks her from hearing the deeper music of life. When people speak without substance or posture for approval, she often grows silent, not out of disdain but because she feels disconnected from anything that lacks truth. She would rather sit in silence than exchange words that carry no real meaning. She would rather have one soul, deep connection than 100 acquaintances built on pretense. Her presence calls others to be more honest, more raw, more real, not through pressure but through the quiet example of how she lives. She is uninterested in status appearance, or playing roles to fit into boxes society has. Her spirit was not made to be contained by what is expected or convenient. Fashion trends, social masks, polite lies, none of these things can hold her attention for long because they do not nourish the soul. She values depth in every interaction, in every choice, in every aspect of her life. Her conversations may be fewer but they are charged with meaning. Her relationships may be smaller in number but they are grounded in mutual respect and emotional truth. She does not seek to impress but to connect. She does not chase attention but invites reflection. This devotion to truth can make her feel like an outsider at times, someone out of sync with a world that often rewards surface over substance. But she would never trade her integrity for belonging. The pain of being misunderstood is easier for her to bear than the ache of betraying herself. She honors honesty, even when it's messy or uncomfortable, and this commitment makes her both brave and rare. In a world that often forgets how to be real, she remembers. And in remembering, she becomes a quiet invitation for others to return to their own truth without fear, without masks, without apology. She does not love from a place of need, possession, or performance because her love is not a transaction or a reward. It is an offering, pure and whole, given freely from the soul. When she loves, it is not only with her heart but with her presence, her depth, her silence, her stillness, and the parts of herself that have no name. Her love does not seek to control or change but to understand, to witness, to hold space for the other to be exactly as they are. She is not drawn to shallow flirtations or momentary infatuations because her soul longs for connection that transcends time and form. Her heart recognizes what is real, what is rooted, what is eternal, and it cannot settle for anything less. She does not fall in love recklessly, but when she does, it is with a depth that can feel almost overwhelming to those unfamiliar with such intensity. She sees the other not just for who they are on the surface, but for who they are beneath their fears, beyond their wounds, behind the stories they tell themselves. Her love does not feed the ego, it feeds the soul, and that kind of love is not always easy to receive because it demands presence, honesty, and the willingness to be seen in one's wholeness and vulnerability. She is not interested in being someone's dream or fantasy. She wants to be known, and she wants to know. Her love holds space for contradiction, for imperfection, for transformation, and she offers it without condition. Not because she lacks boundaries but because she understands that true love does not bargain. She has no desire to mold anyone into what they are not because she knows that every soul blooms in its own time, in its own way. This makes her love feel different, sometimes even unsettling, because it asks nothing but gives everything. It is not loud, not showy, not desperate, it is steady, timeless, and quietly powerful. People may walk away from her thinking her love was too much, too intense, too honest, but they often return in silence, years later, realizing they were never loved so completely. Her love remains, not in possession or longing, but in presence, in memory. In the sacred place where souls once met, and without needing explanation or permission. She moves through the world guided not just by logic or routine, but by an inner sense that defies explanation. A quiet knowing that arises before thought and often proves more accurate than any plan. Her intuition is not dramatic or mystical in appearance. It is woven into the small choices she makes each day, the people she gravitates toward, the places she avoids without needing to know why. There is a subtle intelligence in the way she senses energy, reads unspoken emotions, and perceives truth beneath appearances. While others may second-guess themselves, she often acts with calm certainty. Not because she always understands her decisions in the moment, but because she has learned to trust the invisible language of her inner voice. This intuitive guidance has been shaped over time, through experiences that have confirmed what she once doubted, through moments when logic failed and her instincts proved true. She no longer needs proof to believe what her body already knows, what her heart already whispers, what her dreams already show her in symbols too rich for the conscious mind. She pays attention to the pull of things, to the way her body responds before her mind can catch up, to the synchronicities that line her path like markers left by something greater than reason. When she meets someone, she often feels immediately whether their presence is safe or draining, whether they speak with truth or hide behind masks, whether her soul feels drawn to theirs for a purpose yet unknown. She may not always speak these insights aloud, but she carries them with quiet certainty, allowing them to shape her decisions in ways that often appear subtle to the outside world, but are profoundly significant within. Her intuition connects her to something beyond herself, a deeper feel of awareness that feels both personal and universal, ancient and immediate. She does not need to control every outcome because she trusts the signs, the symbols, the soft nudges that redirect her when she strays too far from her path. In a world that often prioritizes logic over feeling, she has learned that her greatest wisdom often comes in moments of stillness. When she turns inward and listens to what cannot be measured or explained but is nonetheless true, guiding her step by step through the unfolding mystery of her life, without needing to know the destination to trust the way forward. She walks through the modern world with ancient echoes in her spirit, carrying a quiet remembrance of something older than this life, older than language, older than the names given to the sacred. There is something in her that recognizes patterns others miss, something that responds to mystery not with fear but with familiarity. She feels called not to follow the crowd but to honor the rhythm of the soul, the wisdom of the body, the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. Even in the most ordinary settings, she brings a sense of the ceremonial, as if she knows that every moment holds something holy if you learn how to see. She may never say it aloud, but her presence speaks the language of the archetypes, the wise woman, the mystic, the seer, the priestess, archetypes that live within her and guide her quietly. Her life is not about climbing ladders or chasing approval but about remembering, reclaiming, restoring what has been forgotten in a world that moves too fast to listen. She holds space for silence, for ritual, for questions that have no immediate answers because she knows that not everything sacred can be explained. People are drawn to her without knowing why, sensing something steady, something grounded, something that sees through illusion and calls the soul forward. She does not need a temple to be holy, nor a title to hold wisdom, because her temple is within and her wisdom is lived. She embodies the old ways even when she lives in new spaces, weaving ancient knowing into modern life not through force but through presence, through intention, through care. She feels most alive not when she is consumed by ambition, not when she is connected to meaning, to purpose, to the invisible threads that tie the human experience to something greater. Her life may appear simple from the outside, but there is nothing ordinary about the way she tends to beauty, honors truth, and moves in harmony with something vast and unseen. She is not here to entertain or to impress, but to remind, to awaken, to bring others back into relationship with what is sacred, real and enduring, and in doing so she fulfills a quiet purpose that no one had to give her because it has lit inside her for lifetimes, waiting only to be remembered. So, when you meet such a woman, do not ask her for her race or her age. Ask her what she dreams of at night. Ask her what breaks her heart. Ask her what she remembers that she never learned. For she is not here to impress the world but to anchor it. These women are not relics of the past, they are bridges to the eternal. And the world needs them now more than ever. Thank you.